Hello, Squirrel Tribe. So the Senate Judiciary Committee held a meeting to discuss the banned books, right? And then John Kennedy, Senator John Kennedy, who is a Republican out of Louisiana, he read some of the quotes from the books that are on this banned list, right? Now, we're going to watch this video together. I have never seen it. You're going to get my honest reaction, and then we're going to discuss exactly what happened at this Senate Judiciary Committee meeting. Let's go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I confess I'm a little confused, and I appreciate the argument or discussion that we've been having, but for me it's a little too conceptual, or I don't know, metaphysical or theological or whatever you want to call it. I want to try to understand what you're asking us to do. Let's take two books that have been much discussed. The first one is called All Boys Aren't Blue, and I will quote from it. I put some lube on and got him on his knees, and I began to slide into him from behind. I pulled out of him and kissed him while he masturbated. He asked me to turn over while he slipped a condom on himself. This was my ass, and I was struggling to imagine someone inside me.
Look, I know this is a serious topic, but watching this man straight face read this is killing me. I'm not even going to pretend that I'm going to be super mature about this, because that is definitely not something you expect to hear to come out of Senator John Kennedy's mouth at all. It's just extremely, it's like a Twilight Zone kind of conversation that's being had right now. Now, I will say that I don't know what age group this book is being pushed on. Is this in an elementary school? Because, oh no. Is it in a middle school? Oh no. High school? Still technically, oh no, but there are high schoolers who are 18 years old. So if you want to look at things from a legal ramification, 18-year-olds can buy the books that are considered adult content. So if you have these in a school library and it has to be shown like an ID to check out certain books, maybe that's a way for people to, I don't know, for some people to be okay with books like this being in schools. Me personally, no, not at all. I'm a 42-year-old grown-ass woman, and even I am like feeling myself getting red in the face listening to Senator John Kennedy read this. And it's whether it was two guys or a guy and a girl, it's still very, very graphic. But here's the thing also, I can picture it because I am a 42-year-old female who has had sex. I have a child. Sex has been had. I've also seen things across the internet throughout my lifespan, whether, on purpose or not. I have seen things, as we all have seen things, I'm sure. So you can picture this kind of stuff. Younger audiences, younger kids, elementary, good Lord, never should this be in any sort of elementary school whatsoever. Middle school, same thought process there. High school, again, I'm only thinking of 18-year-olds who can legally do these things, but should it then be in a public school? Hell no. They can't visualize this stuff. They haven't experienced these things. And if they have experienced these things at any of those ages, that's a whole nother conversation that needs to be had with the parents on how they, allowed that to happen. But let's get back to good old Senator John Kennedy reading this very graphic novel.
He got on top and slowly inserted himself into me. It was the worst pain I think I have ever felt in my life. Eventually, I felt a mix of pleasure with the pain. Close quote. All boys aren't blue.
All boys aren't blue.
The second is another much discussed book. I'm sure you're familiar with it. It's called Genderqueer.
Why would...
Let me read the next.
So, all boys aren't blue. I don't know what that means. Does that mean that in this book, one of those two people in the book was a transgender who considered themselves a girl? Because all boys aren't blue insinuates to me from the title that it's not about being a boy. So I would think that's a transgender book. I personally have never heard of it. I have a 14-year-old, almost 15-year-old daughter who, you know, she loves books. She reads a lot of books. Excuse me. She looks at a lot of different titles and stuff when we go to either Barnes & Noble's, Books A Million, whatever. We actually went and saw a movie yesterday, and there was a preview for a new movie coming out from Colleen Hoover. At which point, as soon as this thing came out on the screen and it showed Colleen Hoover's name, my child puts her hand over her face, and I'm like, what? She's like, Colleen Hoover, she's like banned from certain, you know, age groups. She's like a TikTok book kind of thing. I don't know. There's these things called TikTok books or TikTok books or Tick books. I don't know what it's called, but where TikTok is putting together all these lists of books that people should read, that kids should read and everything else. And Colleen Hoover is one of those authors. And she says to me during this preview in this movie, she's whispering in my ear, she goes, she is not an okay person. Like, she writes things that shouldn't be in books. And I'm asking her, I'm like, well, how do you know this? And she goes, well, I have friends and they talk and some of them read these things. She goes, I don't have any of her books. I don't want any of her books, but I've heard some things that are in her books. And I said, like what? Because of course I'm curious. So she pulls up this passage, she pulls out her phone, she pulls up this paragraph from one of her books, and it's where a mother and father are talking about the genitalia of their son and talking about how great this baby's genitalia is. And I'm like, what in the actual heck are we doing where we're turning stuff like that into movies? I mean, there's movies all over the place, but it's something, those books by this Colleen Hoover chick, they're aimed at middle schoolers and high schoolers. And from what my daughter is telling me and from what I saw from that one passage, they're not okay books to be aiming at middle schoolers and high schoolers. So I'm very curious what this next one's going to be, which obviously we already have some sort of idea, but let's jump back to this.
From that quote, I got a new strap-on harness today. I can't wait to put it on you. It will fit my favorite dildo perfectly. You're going to look so hot. I can't wait to have your cock in my mouth.
Okay.
I'm going to give you the blowjob of your life. Then I want you inside of me. End quote.
Well, okay, again, 42-year-old woman. Look, y'all can see my face is red. I have no makeup on today. I look like a tomato no matter what, but I'm literally feeling my face getting red over here. Because these aren't things that you want to say or to have conversations like this in front of people. So for him to do this and keep a straight face, and for everybody in that room to be sitting there, now I will say, I wonder if any people that were listening to this had any sort of reaction to it, because you never know who's in the audience, you know what I'm saying? It is definitely an awkward situation to be in. And when you step back, because right now I'm looking at it, you know, I'm listening to it and it's amusing me, but at the same time, it's embarrassing and everything else. But if you literally stop and think for a second, you're like, wait a second, these are books that are in our children's schools and in public libraries that kids can just go check out. It takes on a whole new form of just disgust, disbelief. There's nothing wrong with having these kind of books. Let's be fully understandable. There's nothing wrong with having erotica books that people want to read to submerge their minds in instead of watching porn or doing something like that. Maybe it's something that people need if they're single, if they're solo, or if whatever reasons people have the books, right? There is a whole erotica section at most bookstores, maybe some libraries as well. There are also a lot of romance writers out there, and a lot of people read romance. You know, you've got Judy Devereaux and Nora Roberts and some other ones. I can't think of really that many right now. But they talk about sex, but not like this. This is definitely graphic. And in none of those romance novels have I ever read the C-O-C-K word. The cock-a-doodle-doo has never been in one of the books that I have read. There's always some weird, you know, other way to describe it, and it's normally got the word engorged in it for some reason. I don't know who decided that word was sexy, because it's definitely not. But when you're hearing about these books as banned books, the reason they want them to be banned books is because they're in public schools. That is going to be an issue. All right, let me get back to this to figure out exactly what else Senator John Kennedy says here.
Now, Mr. Secretary.
Mr. Secretary.
What are you asking us to do? are you suggesting that only librarians should decide whether the two books that I just referenced should be available to kids? Is that what you're saying?
No.
Okay. Tell me what you're saying.
Well, first of all,
Don't give me a speech. Tell me what you're asking me.
with all due respect, Senator, the words you spoke are disturbing, especially coming out of your mouth.
It's very disturbing. But I would also tell you
that we're not advocating for kids to read porn, to Senator Booker's
What
point.
are you advocating for?
We are advocating for parents, random parents, not to have the ability, under the guise of keeping kids safe, to try and challenge the world view of every single manner on these issues.
You're getting conceptual again.
I'm not getting conceptual.
Well,
I'm saying
yes,
that
you are. Yes, you are. Because I want to know what you're recommending. It sounds to me like what some of you are saying, the librarians should decide who gets to see that book.
I'm saying when you...
Let me be the first one to say that it should not be up to a librarian what your child reads. It should be up to you as a parent what your child reads. The librarians could be cuckoo, batshit crazy. You never know who the librarian is. They can be the most far left person, the most far right person, the most transgender person, the gayest gay you've ever seen, the straightest straight you've ever seen. You just never know. And so their beliefs are then going to dictate what anybody can read, and that's not okay. Okay, and I know that sounds sort of hypocritical when I say that their beliefs shouldn't dictate what everybody reads, but at the same time, the belief that a 12-year-old should be reading these books, that's just wrong on every single level. And if you're the type of parent that thinks your 12-year-old should read this, you're a shitty parent. I'm not going to pull any punches on that. If you think your 12-year-old should be reading about strap-ons and blowjobs and masturbating, we're in a really sick time in our history if that is okay with you as a parent, to put your 12-year-old child in a situation where they're reading these and then wondering what it means, maybe Googling these things, maybe trying these things out at 12-year-old. We have way too many young girls who are pregnant at 13 and 14. It could be because of books like this or people. Anyway, I'm just saying. Ew. Okay.
When individual parents are allowed to make a decision of where that line is, and To Kill a Mockingbird, which involves a rape scene, should that book be pulled from our libraries? I think it becomes a slippery slope.
I think you ought to think.
All right, I may be on the wrong side here, but To Kill a Mockingbird is one of my absolute favorite books, and I don't think that should be a banned book. Rape is a thing that happens, and I think people need to know about that personally. There are ways that it's discussed and written in books that is perverse and disgusting. To Kill a Mockingbird is not one of those books. To Kill a Mockingbird is a very, very good book, and I don't think that the rape reason is why they pulled it off the shelves, but I could be wrong. But I personally don't think that should be a banned book. I think everybody should read that book.
You ought to think about it a little bit more before you come here.
I've thought about,
if
Senator,
you're going to propose something, you ought to be able, in 30 seconds, to be able to explain what
Senator,
you're asking us to do. Ms. Kelly.
At any point in time, have you ever met anybody in a government or official position who could give you an elevator speech, who could tell you in 30 seconds what they are going to do, what they want to do, what they think, what they believe? No, because they're meant to run around in circles until your brain's like, I don't know what you're saying to me. Fine, whatever, because that's what politicians do.
Ms. Kelly, what do you understand? Well, let me skip you for a second. Mr. Cameron, tell me what you're proposing.
It's pronounced mix.
Mix? Is that how would you like me to refer to you?
Senator, your definition of sexual is synonymous with LGBTQ identity.
I'm not asking you that. I'm asking you to tell me you read those two excerpts.
Genderqueer.
Do you think that, are you asking that only librarians and not parents have any say in whether minors can read those books? Is that what you're saying?
Genderqueer has never been in my school library, so it's never been banned.
Well, suppose it was. Should it be up just to the librarian, or should parents have a say?
There should be facilitation of collaboration between students,
Should parents have
and
a say?
Parents should be working with students and educators to be making decisions, because students are...
And who decides ultimately? The librarian, or do you take a vote, or who takes the vote?
Book review committees in the community in my school district.
You want a committee to decide?
There are committees.
Okay. Well, I'm asking you, how do we decide whether the two books that I just referenced should be available in the library? What would you, if you were running things, what would you do?
All Boys Aren't Blue, the scene you mentioned, is about sexual abuse.
I know what it's about.
It's not
What
erotic.
would you do in terms of making the books available? Would you say anybody can see them, or they have to be in a special session?
Students who do not read books like All Boys Aren't Blue cannot learn what is appropriate.
I understand that.
They cannot learn
I understand, but none of you
about
want to
abuse.
answer my question. You come here.
The runaround is ridiculous, and saying that in order to learn what you have to read these kind of books is absolutely the stupidest thing I've heard come out of this person's mouth so far.
Here and you say censorship is bad, and of course it's bad. But the obvious response is, okay, you heard the books we're talking about. Okay, we're not talking about Catcher in the Rye. So tell me what you want, who gets to decide. And all I've heard is the librarians. And parents have nothing to do with it. And if that's your response, what planet did you just parachute in from?
Parents, Senator.
Or what country, more appropriately? This is not China.
Parents, Senator, for all due respect, parents absolutely have a say. My parents were immigrants, came to this country. We never checked out books without our parents seeing what books we were reading. They encouraged us to read books.
Mr. Secretary, I understand this is good for your
That's cute, but we're talking about school libraries here too, not just public libraries. Public library, when you're 16, you can go there without your parent. When you're in school, you can go into a library without your parent. So this guy's whole thing of our parents never let us, I mean, I'm calling bullshit on that, because at some point, I'm sure you went into your school library or your public library without a parent and probably checked out a book you didn't want your parents to know about. Also, though, if you really want to stop and think about it, we didn't have books like this back then. Even when I was a child, there was nothing like this in the school library I could check out, or the public library that I could check out without going into the adult section. And in the adult section, the colors on the books were different. So when you got up to the front with the librarian, she knew that that book was for adults. And at my age, whether I was 8 or 12 or 15, she would have gone, honey, no, I'm sorry. This is the adult section. You're going to have to stay in the children or the preteen and keep it trucking, right?
Good for your politics back home.
It's got nothing to do with my politics. My bill is passed. My bill is
It has
passed.
everything to do with your politics.
I'm here to.
But you came here with a problem, and I'm trying to understand the solution, and you don't have one.
We solve the solution.
Other than to tell us that we don't agree with you, you're on the wrong. We'll be on the wrong side of history.
We solved the problem in Illinois. We fixed it because we.
Well, there are others you could work on.
Well, that's why
I'm
I'm here
out
to
of
help.
time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
To help other states make these decisions.
Let me just be the first to say, I don't live in Illinois, but I do love Chicago. I love Chicago. Downtown Chicago, loved it. But there are a lot of issues in Illinois itself that whatever this guy's talking about, I mean, maybe fixing banned books or figuring out how you want to do that, they think they've done a great thing, but there's still a lot more issues there they have to take care of. Like, I don't know, illegal immigration and the homelessness and everything else that's going on, but that's not the point of any of this. It is up to the parents to decide what happens. It is not up to some stranger in the seat of the librarian. It's not up to the teacher. It's not up to anything like that. It has to be up to parents, to caregivers. Now, people can come out and go, well, what if they don't have a parent or a caregiver or whatever else? Then hopefully they're not just homeless children roaming around in school. It has happened before, parentless children, but hopefully there's somebody in their lives who can teach them right from wrong. You got to look at it from the other side too. If we're going to do this, you got to look at every single angle. There's people out there, kids out there with parents who are just absolute trash to begin with and who don't take care of them and wouldn't stop them from, setting themselves on fire at 7 because they don't pay attention to them. Those kind of parents suck, and they're going to be the ones who let these kids read whatever, do whatever, and then raise basically juvenile delinquents just from lack of parenting. These books, things like this, I'm a very open-minded person, all right? I'm a very open-minded person, but stuff like this does not belong in a school setting whatsoever. Even if you are 18, should there be a little section for 18 and up under lock and key? And, if you want to check the book out, the librarian has to call your parents. You could go that far. You could do that. That way everybody's happy with the solution. But at the same time, that's doing too much. If you want to have those kind of books, they need to be in public libraries and they need to have age-appropriate warnings or whatever on them. And then if you're going to check this out, you better have an ID. If you don't have an ID, guess what? You're not old enough to check out a book. And I'm not even saying a driver's license. You can go to the DMV and or wherever else and just get a little ID with your picture on it and your date of birth, so you can rent a book. Yeah, that's right, at the library. Check out a book or buy beer or cigarettes without having to have the ability to drive or whatever else. If you don't have the ability to go get an ID that says your name and date of birth, you're too young for these books. Plain and simple. Hell, I'm 42 and I feel too young for those books. Even me listening to them, I was like, oh, okay, we're getting like real aggressive here, but you do you, boo. Book bans are a thing. Some books need to be banned, but in a way that it still is up to the parents. Because if we give government full control of it, then that's a slippery slope. We know it. That's a very slippery slope. I don't think the government should be able to say what books are banned. I don't think the librarian should be able to tell you what you're allowed to check out. I think it has to be up to the parents. And the way this country is going, I'm scared for how things are going to go and how far we're going to let, I'm going to say it out loud, how far we're going to let the left push till they get their way. So, I don't know. But listening to Senator John Kennedy read those, I'm going to have nightmares later. Nightmares. Love y'all. Bye.